Mario Kart 7 was the first game in the series that came out after I was already online and in the MK community. As it was the new title, part of me was expecting that it was going to be the next new big thing and that everyone was going to try it out and play mainly that. But as time passed, I remember seeing some threads, namely on the WCL forums, saying that the game wasn't going to be good due to it being a handheld game and that they shouldn't focus on it at all in the future. And this is very disappointing to hear from me because, personally, while I understand why some people prefer home console games, I think handheld games can be great too. So I prefer to play MKA DX on the home console, or on the TV, but that doesn't mean the idea of holding a console in my own hands is like something I scoff at. Some of my favorite games of all time are on handheld devices. Some series I think are optimal to have on handhelds, like Pokemon, including Game Freak themselves, because they think that having the social experience where you take it around and trade people makes it better. On top of this, I adored Mario Kart DS, so for the next handheld game after it, I was extremely excited to try out 7. So to me, I had the mindset going in that even if I thought the game was worse, that at least it was a new take on the series, and I think I was going to fully enjoy it for what it was, and I think that's still the best mentality to have. Perhaps a game isn't exactly what you want it to be, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's unplayable. I think change is a very interesting thing, so I was excited to see what 7 was going to bring to the table. Sometimes things are changed for the worse, but a lot of times things can be changed for the better. I just think that's something that's important to realize. We know the 3DS to be a wildly successful console now, but when MK7 came out, the thing was honestly perceived to be a piece of shit. The 3DS did not have a very good launch year. It really hit its stride in 2013 or so it turned out to be a very worthwhile handheld to have due to a very vast game library that was very bare bones in 2011. For me, the DS, or the 3DS, it was worth it ever since MK7 came out. Mario Kart 7 seemed to be a direct response to Mario Kart Wii. Even though many people think it's more similar to Mario Kart 8 just because of the naming scheme and the gliding and underwater driving, I'm going to have to say that this is a very false assumption. MK7 operated much like Mario Kart Wii would have if it was on a handheld game, or if it was on a handheld console. This game is by far the closest game in the series to Mario Kart Wii, and I think a lot of the design and balancing that went into the game was an attempt to fix some of the more broken aspects of Mario Kart Wii. The position-based item system was back, and the items operated quite similarly to Mario Kart Wii. The big difference was that there were only 8 players per race, which was a big turnoff to some people. My takeaway is that even though you usually prefer to have more people, I think it made balancing this game easier in terms of the item distribution. I think 8 players worked very well in this game, and it's likely because the design of the game was kept in mind for 8 players. So the MT system was once again automatic like Mario Kart Wii, so item balance played a big role in making the game work well, rather than just like snaking or driving like fast with mini turbos in the older games. I think if there's anything MK7 did well, I think making a relatively fair item system is definitely the potential highlight. So like the last video, we'll be taking a deeper look into everything the game has to offer today. Was it a worthwhile successor to Mario Kart Wii, or even Mario Kart DS for that matter? Is it worth calling a handheld the successor to Mario Kart Wii? Was it better, or was it just a disappointment? I'll give my point of view near the end. I think it's fair to say that the biggest difference in this game from Mario Kart Wii was probably the removal of inward drifting bikes. The driving is vastly different as a result. This could be seen as a big negative, but luckily, the karts were actually fixed and usable in this game as opposed to the ones in Mario Kart Wii. The karts in this game felt a little less flexible than the bikes in Mario Kart Wii, but they were more than sufficient. To me, while MKW's bikes had a little more control, I should say. I felt they were a bit wild and bumpy, if that makes sense. The karts in MK7, while maybe limited overall, felt smooth as silk to control. For speedier combos, we eventually learned that it's optimal to hop out of drifts for most turns, which actually helped a ton for alignment purposes. One of the minor details in this game that turned out to be a great mechanic was how they implemented automatic drift from Mario Kart Wii into this game, but as still an option that you can use with manual drift. You don't get the choice anymore like MKW and have to play with manual, but when turning sharp enough, you will turn in a style like automatic drift in Mario Kart Wii. This is likely also for beginners. I think it made the game maybe harder for them than automatic drift did in Mario Kart Wii. But the good players got a big benefit out of the automatic drift because as a result, we were able to abuse the automatic drift after hopping out of MTs. This allowed us to realign to how we pleased without losing speed. Normally, on a straight, turning a lot would be slower, but this temporary sharp turn, when stacked with an MT, allowed for some pretty awesome new ways to maneuver. The addition also allowed us to perform mini turbos called straight stretch mini turbos. While snaking was not optimal in the game, you could perform these MTs on straight stretches with good alignment and gain a bit of time when hopping and auto drifting back into the desirable line. It wasn't a game changer, but it was a nice tech to have in a game that doesn't have a lot of tech otherwise. While it was still possible to charge MTs faster in this game, soft drifting was not really a big technique at all. I don't even think it was in the game, I can't really tell. This didn't make much of a difference to me because it felt like most turns could still be done properly, but it would have been potentially cool here given that getting SMTs is once again a vital part of the game like in older titles. The supposed selling point of this game was the addition of hang gliders and the ability to drive underwater. I think that was just like a marketing scheme for like the casual audience, and honestly, I think these were nearly irrelevant changes, but you know, whatever sells copies, I suppose. I suppose they allowed for some different track design, but I don't think it really did too much to change up the game dramatically. I think they did a pretty good job with the gliding in this game. Mechanics-wise, they did enough to make it interesting. You actually had a lot of control over the glider in this game compared to MK8, and I think it was better for that. You could perform techs known as glider boost, which would give you an extra speed boost if you glided downward directly above an obstacle. The most notable instance of this would be gliding over the arch at the end of Coconut Mall, or above the pipes on Rock Mountain. It was a unique way to gain a lot of speed, and bouncing with your glider before touching the ground was another way to gain a little bit of speed. On tracks like Bowser's Castle also, doing this was a decent amount faster after landing on the bottom path from the first glider. On Music Park, you could also perform a trick when gliding down when the music notes were tapping to get a little bit of a boost too. So there's a lot of flexibility with the glider. Shrooming during a glider, or using a mushroom during your glider, or before the panel, would give you a huge speed boost also. It was so noticeable that there were notable stream spots like the glider on Music Park or the final glider on DK Jungle where this was used. I thought this was a cool mechanic and a cool way to catch up. Specific gliders acted very different to other gliders as well. While heavier ones like the Beast glider were a little bit faster, they had noticeably less handling. Using some lighter gliders allowed you to take move around more easily and take a unique cut at the end of Dino Jungle where you just cut off the last turn entirely. In cannons, a new change in this game was being able to actually act during them and to move around. Overall, this didn't change a lot, but I think it was a good change. You could speed up in cannons by holding back to go higher, and also go lower to land faster if needed. You could cancel your glider with a tap of the B button, and this was applicable to the cannon on the Airship Fortress, where you actually gain time overall by timing a glider cancel well. Cannons no longer granted invincibility. I think this was the logical change, honestly. It makes no sense that you were impervious to lightning bolts in cannons, like in older games. I think getting hit in cannons didn't damage a race as much as dodging in cannons did in Mario Kart Wii. That being said, zapping people at the beginning of cannons was still problematic because oftentimes it was unavoidable for a driver. This affected Airship Fortress pretty badly, since the cannon was late in the lap, and without much counterplay, unless you somehow got a star from one of the crates, which is very rare, you were going to get screwed over. To summarize, gliders had a lot going for them in this game, and I'm a bit disappointed that they removed a lot of what made them unique in MK8. The underwater driving honestly just sucks. The only really good effect on the game that they had, I believe, is simply nerfing the best setups in the game because they're generally bad underwater, but for everyone, underwater driving is just unsatisfying no matter what combo you are using. We all hate water levels in video games for a reason, because they feel slow and clunky, and it's no exception in this game. And in this game, the goal is to go fast to begin with, so being slow and clunky is not really desirable in a racing game that focuses on speed. There's one really cool feature here. I think it's when you nosedive into the water from above, you get a little bit of a boost if you hold back immediately upon entering. I think that was cool, but that was about it. Some mechanics are vastly different now. The collisions in this game act more or less like Mario Kart Wii, without the ability to wheelie bump people now. Bumping into people has almost no negative effects now if you aren't hit by an item. And one thing that was heavily changed was how drafts work. They are extremely fast now, almost too fast, and honestly, it's exhilarating, just unfortunate to get one in an area with a lot of turns, because you will go crashing into a wall. I feel that perhaps they went a little overboard with them in this game, though admittedly they're super fun. If you thought Sonic was fast, you'll lose your mind when you stack a mushroom with a draft in this game. It's beyond 200cc levels, and I guess it's only temporary though. There's one lap in particular I played on Waluigi Pinball at some point in time where I started in the back on lap 3 and actually managed to get 3 drafts while holding triple shrooms. I won this race, and I think honestly I may have finished the last lap in under 40 seconds, which is unthinkable given the world record isn't even sub 2:10. They're for sure interesting. While talking about Waluigi Pinball, I guess, though, I should mention that hopping when constantly going downhill is faster as well. This is cool, I suppose, but not really a game changer. What was a huge game changer was a new mechanic in MK7, which is brake drifting. I high-key didn't even realize you could do this for the first months that the game was out, but I think that this was a really good change. It allows for new options and flexibility that we didn't previously have, and for some specific parts of the game, it was faster to utilize it because this game was obsessed with turns over 270 degrees in some areas, and getting a tighter line was worth the loss in speed. You would slow down, but you would actually be gaining time because of your racing line. I think perhaps this not being in earlier games wasn't a big deal, because those games either had manual mini turbo or bikes that could easily drift out of trouble. For MK7, this was very useful since the best combo were generally giant carts, and because it could sometimes allow you to avoid items like green shells while still maintaining a mini turbo that you could use after the slowdown to get back up to top speed afterwards, rather than just trying to give up on the boost altogether. Giving more options generally creates a more satisfying experience, so this was a welcome addition to the series, in my opinion. A rather controversial thing that this game reintroduced was Item Spy. There are two sides to this debate, and one person may say that being able to predict when people will use items is better, and some may say it's better to predict items that they have to begin with. Item Spy was missing in Mario Kart Wii, so a lot of people didn't like the feature in this game after being used to how MKW operated. This feature was actually ripped from Mario Kart DS, and it makes sense why it's here. It's a handheld game, and obviously they want to make use of the touchscreen somehow by spreading tons of data on the touchscreen. Personally, I used to like Item Spy more, because when I was younger, calling was not a frequent option for me in matches. I liked being able to develop synergy with teammates based on what items, or based on how we used items, and having the given information already. But especially more recently with Deluxe, I see the other side of the coin as well. It forces you to predict more, and for me personally, I think Item Spy was probably done better in MK7, and that the lack of the Item Spy was done better in 8 Deluxe. In 7, you could still hold 2 items at once in the front, so you could kind of hide some of your trailed items, to perhaps trick others if they weren't near you. And on 8, you only had 1 item either way, so Item Spy was 100% accurate in that game and pretty much told you the answer every single time up front. In Deluxe, I like how it's set up more than MKW, because while the element of prediction is still there, you can still see what items other players are holding to gain hints. And of course, if you're holding something good, you could hide it behind another item in Deluxe. Personally, I feel like Item Spy doesn't have much of an overall impact on the game's playability. Some may argue that no Item Spy increases strategy because you act on uncertainties, but I feel that Item Spy, allowing opponents to know what's up, nerfs some of the biggest unexpected blows at times. I get why it's a polarizing debate, and usually I have a strong opinion on videos like this. On this subject though, I don't really have a side I'm firmly on for once. The only annoyance, I'd say that Item Spy is a little wonky when blue shells appear. Unlike MKDS, 7 was more item-centric, so stopping for blue shells could be seen as very common opposed to MKDS, especially in worldwide mode. I think it was a reason to play 4v4 over FFA in general, just because you couldn't always stop in team matches. It was definitely a big concern in worldwides in this game, way more so than even MK8, but I think that's perhaps because while Item Spy existed in 8, not everyone perhaps used it because it was not as convenient as the touchscreen in 7. In 7, it's pretty much just too blatant to ignore blue shells on the touchscreen. Before I get into the actual content of the game, I suppose, let's talk about one thing they brought back for the first time in a while, this being coins. A lot of people will argue that coins are better in this game than 8 because they have less impact on races due to them not being an item, but I think this is really not true. For me, I think it's fine that they aren't items, but how they act in general is really, really bad, I think. I think that the coins buff first place way too much in this game. And I know I like to support front running, but this was a little ridiculous because it just made the game slower for everybody else. Coins take forever to respawn in this game, and a player in first place can actually just dominate the coin industry and make everyone poor in comparison. At the very least, last place starts each race with 7 coins, which is actually a lot compared to 8. The beginning of a race is almost up for grabs because the back can pull items like golden mushrooms for a set, but once first gets established, it is very hard to displace them. There are no fibs in this game, or fake item boxes, so they'll get some form of defense from every item box that they hit. On top of being able to hog all the coins, it can make the rest of the pack very slow, while first just profits off them. The hit stun is kind of crazy in this game also. Losing coins is really unfortunate in this game, but it feels like you can't really plan comebacks with them. Coin respawn time being so slow is a major kick in the balls for this game and makes people much more item reliant on comebacks in my opinion. Perhaps we'll explain all of this in the item section, however. Most of the worthwhile control changes I've already covered, but I'll reiterate a few things. The controls were very similar as to Mario Kart DS. The B button could now be used for brake drifts, which is a new thing, and the L and X buttons were both responsible for items like in Mario Kart DS. For some reason, I preferred the X button in MKDS, but the L button in 7. I'm not sure why, but I think that was just me being bad in the early days of MKDS, because I feel like the L button is just more comfortable. One notable change was that for some reason the Y button changed function. In MKDS, it was used to adjust the touchscreen, but you could also tap it to change. Now the Y button is used to accelerate, which is the same as the A button. This change baffles me, because now it forces you to use the touchscreen for one of the functions of the game. I read a thread poll once asking how many people used Y to accelerate, and I was surprised to see that like 5% of people did. I was expecting literally everybody to use the A button, because that seems to be the most intuitive. Not only is the A button like probably the most common button on like consoles, but like A stands for accelerate, so seems pretty obvious to me, but some people liked using Y. Changing the touchscreen was a bigger deal in this game as well, so it baffles me that they removed one option for it. It was more important because unlike MKDS, on the secondary screen of the player names you can't see items anymore. So in team matches especially, it's important to be ready to utilize the touchscreen constantly and frequently. I found that driving off the main touchscreen was way harder in 7 than DS also, just by simpler driving in the game. The function of the main screen is quite literally to see, or the main touchscreen, it's quite literally to see items, I think. Speaking of accelerating, it seems that they changed the timing for the rocket boost to be sooner to Mario Kart Wii, but you press it sooner than Mario Kart Wii, I mean, but only very slightly. This always threw me off a little, and as a result, I can't just hit this anymore consistently due to the lack of muscle memory, though I was better at it back when I actually played the game actively. Like mentioned earlier, this game was very similar to Mario Kart Wii, so a few other controls were modified accordingly. Tricks or stunts or trick boosts, they stayed in the game, but how they were performed differed now. You press the R button to trick off ramps now, which was weird at first because the R button has so many actions already. The result was that tricks just had a smaller effect now. They offered much smaller boosts than Mario Kart Wii, and couldn't be input in a directional manner now. Low tricks were still a thing, but they were mainly based on timing with the trick button now, instead of I guess hopping and timing like in Mario Kart Wii. Tricking as late as possible generally gave you less air, so that was something you had to go for, I guess. The 3D switch, while technically not a button, was usable for this game. Since MK7 came out in 2011, when the 3DS was new, they actually cared about using it instead of just giving up and being lazy like many of their later games. Not gonna lie, the 3D looked gorgeous for this game, but to me, I couldn't use it because it was too distracting and quite frankly, unoptimal for a competitive experience. So while I love the 3D feature for casual games, let's be real here. I don't want to be locked into holding the DS a specific way to play a multiplayer game requiring fast reaction times at all times. Unfortunate, I guess, but it looks good. Tricks mapped to the R button freed up the D-pad, which is now used to switch to first person. This was clearly their way to follow up the Wii Wheel for a handheld device, and honestly, I was fascinated by this setup. I kind of see it as a hard mode, and thought that it was I thought it was kind of fun to try out. I'll explain the times where I actually use this later, since it's relevant to me for a specific mode later. Unfortunately, for the casual players who wanted to play with a wheel like Mario Kart Wii, this first-person feature nuked the 3D effect because you constantly had to move the screen, and the 3D effect was probably more used by the casual audience to begin with, so kind of a contradictory feature here. 3D and gyro were cool, but they were practically mutually exclusive experiences that I could never recommend to someone who plays competitive or multiplayer games in order to win. Maybe it's nice for people who aren't content on buying MK games to play more it's probably a good thing for people who buy the games just to play the single player Grand Prix mode, but we all know that I do not fit into that demographic at all. The kart balance was very interesting in this game, and probably more than any other MK game at that. The series first was being able to build different kart setups before races, choosing a different blend of kart frames, gliders, and tires, so we knew perhaps finding the optimal combination would be harder in this game. In the early days of the game, there was a lot of discussion on what was the best, but it was generally accepted that Metal Mario, B-Dasher, and Red Monster tires was the best setup. Like in earlier games, this combo was completely busted. The top two setup statistics were the most unlikely of duos, speed, which is probably obvious, and off-road. We've generally been used to these two stats being almost inverse to each other, but this changed the script completely. The top speed is something you always want, but this kart could also drift off-road, which was huge, especially with how many ramps this game placed off-road, just begging to be used, like on the second turn of Mario Circuit. You could take the slowdown, drift off-road, and charge a mini turbo, and release it on the ramp to get enough speed to go back to normal and get the trick boost, often for great gains. The one exception was like sand on Toad Circuit for whatever reason. It was super heavy off-road, I guess, but with a well-timed SMT, you could take the ramp with an overall gain anyway. Ordinary grass, however, the monster tires gave no shit about it, and they could just drift over pretty much any ordinary off-road in the game. It should also be noted that it still had the advantage of being a heavyweight tire, which is generally associated with good speed. We realized soon that tires were actually just the most important change to make to your setup. There were a few karts that worked especially well, but your tires frequently changed the gameplay entirely. Monster tires gave players the ability to be fast like slicks, but to command the off-road. They also seemingly had better grip and could use strategies like straight stretch mini turbos. Man, I'm struggling with that word. They were flexible and therefore considered to be the best for Wi-Fi. So players were right about the best combination early. Unlike the recent games though, the best combination, while still busted, had something that recent game top combos did not have, and that was a significant weakness. On MKW, Sherbertland and Shy Guy Beach were practically the only tracks where the optimal combo had a notable disadvantage, but the thing was that both of these tracks heavily emphasized item manipulation anyway, though I guess mainly Shy Guy Beach. Clever use of mushrooms could still help out a ton even with the best setup and make them still beat out the Magic Cruiser and the off-road vehicles anyway. On Mario Kart 7, not only are there more tracks that aren't great for monster tires, but they're oriented on front-running unlike Shy Guy Beach, which is normally the strong suit of monster tires, I guess, which is front-running. Tracks like Wario Shipyard, Music Park, and Airship Fortress were all rougher for monster users than people who used wooden or mushroom tires, and they aren't tracks that were easy to catch up on, especially the first two. This was due to poor handling. The setup still could corner most turns in the game just fine, but there were some turns that made mushroom tires an interesting alternative. There are also some other tracks that were harder for monsters as well, just not as much as the three mentioned a moment ago. Still, monsters had an equal significant advantage on tracks like DK Pass, due to the track being almost entirely based on off-road terrain. Nonetheless, unlike the Flame Runner, the top setup was not entirely a safe pick for every track in this game. Because of the removal of Standstill Mini Turbo from MKW, acceleration was also a significant weakness for the main combo. While MKW negated poor acceleration with the alternative Standstill Mini Turbo, this game did not. Getting hit was an absolutely devastating blow for the heavy monster setups, but at least to counterbalance this, first place always got defense items in this game, and mushrooms were common elsewhere. The takeaway here is that the game still had a broken fun combo, but that it wasn't practically flawless. In hindsight, I think this is a good thing. One other interesting thing about the acceleration was that this game had a glitch. If a setup's acceleration stat ended in 0.75, I believe, the setup would actually have 0.75 more acceleration than advertised. I know it was something like this, but I may have said it incorrectly, so correct me if I'm wrong. This made some people try to use lightweights and cruisers with B-Dasher and monsters, or red monsters, but most preferred to just use the top speed setup anyway, to maximize on the strengths of the setup instead of just focusing on acceleration, which was kind of a lost cause already. Like I said last video, character rosters are irrelevant, but this was definitely a hot discussion to have when the game came out. The roster got cut from 24 to 16, which of course is a direct downgrade. You could say that this was to be expected because it was a handheld game, but honestly, I think that's not much of an issue. Maybe I'm wrong and they don't have enough time to make all the character models work, but I really feel like this shouldn't be a big deal even for a handheld, because the roster is it's pretty irrelevant to the gameplay anyway, so like you shouldn't really care about it. Like picking Mario is not gonna like make the game feel that much different from picking like Daisy or something. Of course, there are going to be people butthurt that their favorite character is not in the game, and maybe that ruins the game for them. Fair enough. I think if you're a true fan of the series though, it shouldn't matter much because the gameplay doesn't vary much by character unlike Smash, but you know, to each their own. So let's address the elephant in the room here. No Waluigi. Okay, I don't understand why he's not in the game. Waluigi Pinball's in the game, so this is a head scratcher. But is this really a deal breaker for the game? I don't think so. It sucks, but oh well. It's not like he's a relevant Mario character to begin with. He's a spin-off character. The starting roster matches SMK's roster, replacing DK Jr. with DK, so it's pretty much the same. I thought this was really cool, honestly. It's a nice callback. All these characters clearly deserve to be in the game, so let's talk about the unlockables, I guess. Daisy and Wario are no-brainers, and at this point, I suppose Rosalina is too. Though back when the game came out, I felt differently that they were shoehorning Rosalina into everything, but I've come to accept that she is just a staple part of every Mario roster now. They're all in Smash, so it probably means they should be in Mario Kart as well. I think the game benefit from having Metal Mario because he gave all the benefits of being a heavyweight character while having the cart size of a midweight character. Meta reasons aside, he's not really a great pick for this game. As mentioned, the roster doesn't matter too much, but they could have chosen a better representative here because he is just a clone at the end of the day. I don't support Honey Queen's inclusion at all, and thought it was a reach so they could advertise having 5 new characters. She doesn't really belong. Rosalina at least makes sense as a major character in Mario Galaxy, but Honey Queen quite literally had one level in that game as her claim to fame. In that game, she's humongous. She doesn't fit in a cart, period. I don't know how they did it. It makes no sense to me. Whatever. Shy Guy and Lakitu are my favorite new additions, and they should have honestly been series staples well before 7. Shy Guy was in MKDS, but only as a multiplayer character, but regardless, they're some of the most iconic enemies in the Mario franchise. Great characters to add, you can't really dispute that one. A character that was ridiculed for not being deserving of being in the game was Wiggler. I'm not the biggest Wiggler fan personally, but I'm on board with this one. Wiggler has been around since Super Mario World in the early 90s, and has been a pretty big reoccurring enemy. He was always a unique one too, because he's portrayed as a nice, friendly, and peaceful guy, but also has a crazy state of rage. What's cool here is he was technically the final boss of MKDS's missions mode, so having him playable I think was a cool idea. He fits all the criteria in honesty. He looks silly in a cart, but I think he's a fun addition, and I think it's kind of cute how he gets all mad when he gets hit by items and stuff, because it's a nice callback to a lot of the games he's in. For characters like this, I feel like people are just butthurt that their favorite didn't get in. I think it's fun to have new characters like this to get a shot at being a playable character even if just once. Clearly people didn't like his addition too much and they removed him in 8, but I think it's cool that he's a 7 exclusive in hindsight. What's perhaps sad is people spam Metal Mario because he's good, and it probably sent a message to Nintendo that he was popular. So even as a worse character than Wiggler, he got added to MK8, and on top of this, they thought he was so successful that they needed to add Pink Gold Peach. At the very least, Metal Mario was a real thing in SM64, but I think they may have gone a little too far on this. There are also Miis, but fuck Miis, so I'm ignoring them. They were cool on the Wii because they acted as profiles for games like Wii Sports and Wii Play, but I don't think they need to be around to the present still, especially in Smash. Screw Miis. It's entirely possible that they added Metal Mario and Honey Queen for balancing purposes. There are 5 weight classes in the game, including 4 featherweights, 3 light, 3 medium, 3 cruisers, and 4 heavies. Metal Mario and Honey Queen provide them with 4 heavies. In my opinion, if I could do it all over again, I would have taken these 2 characters out and replaced them with Waluigi and Bowser Jr. Jr. is in Smash because in reality he's one of the actual relevant Mario characters today. I'd place DK and Waluigi in Heavy and replace DK in Cruiser weight with Jr. If you wanted me to get more creative, I would replace Waluigi with Hammer Bro if I was told to have another new character. Hammer Bro is a popular common enemy and probably the toughest normal one in the normal 2D games. I think his addition would be better than both Honey Queen and Metal Mario, honestly, even if it was one less new character. Kamek is another character I think has deserved a shot for a while now. I don't know if that'll ever happen. It almost did in 64. Still hasn't happened. One day it should. Maybe I'll dedicate a video later to a character roster discussion. Alright, so obviously this game has GP mode because it's a Mario Kart game. Like with the last video, GP is exactly what it needed to be. No bullshit, the main method of playing through the game on your own, the casuals love it, it's fine. 3-star criteria seems to be mostly the same if not easier in Mario Kart Wii. I may be wrong on that, but I don't really care. As far as unlocking content goes, the game changes things up a bit. Because of the new kart part system, the game gives you new kart parts when you earn enough coins in-game. I think this is interesting but annoying. I think perhaps a better solution would have been to have a garage where you could buy new kart parts for like specific prices. This way, for people getting the game later or people who are restarting the game, they could get the necessary pieces that could help them compete online and get those earlier. I'm not sure if the parts are randomized, I think they are, but I think the exceptions are the Beast Glider and the Gold parts. You unlock all the characters in this game by completing 150cc cups or beating all the cups on any engine class for Mii's, but fuck Mii's. I think this is a little more of a boring method than Mario Kart Wii, and especially Double Dash, where you got unlockable characters after every cup, and like it felt like really random what you were gonna get. But you know what? This is fine for me. This is more of a casual audience ordeal anyway. Time trials, I'm not gonna lie, this is where some of the damage starts kicking in on this game. This is where the sin counter starts, I guess. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with gameplay here, but the issues are that this game manages to offer less than the most recent game before this one in the series. The only particularly new thing this mode offered was the ability to race 7 ghosts at once. A cool idea on paper, but in reality, it's kind of useless. For the audience watching my video, you're probably going to have one worthwhile ghost to face at best among these 7, and maybe that's not even a guarantee. It's probably just better to face off against your own ghost. You'll probably learn more that way regardless. In Mario Kart Wii, there were dedicated rankings. They gave us regional and friend rankings too, because why the fuck not? A backwards philosophy came into play here. Not only did they remove rankings for some reason, but the ability to download world record ghosts, that's just gone now. Out the window. And before people come up with the excuse that this is a handheld game, it's bound to have less power, let's remind ourselves that they put the time and effort into allowing us to play 7 ghosts at once, which is more useless. But which ones could we actually face? It didn't matter in Nintendo. They just said, oh, you get to play 8-player TTs now. It doesn't actually matter like who you're facing and if that's useful to you. What an achievement. It's a little disappointing, honestly. No longer could we practice versus world record ghosts without having to just luck out on getting them, and FYI, this was extremely rare to get this lucky. But there's more. We are now no longer able to view replays, a feature in MKW for every time possible that you've set. If you wanted to get a replay, you had to immediately after setting a run, record the time and splits on the screen, and click view replay. No big deal, right? Well, here's the thing. You either were viewing the time through Nintendo's third-person camera, or from first-person view. If you played the game like a normal human being and wanted to see strats performed in the view you're used to playing in, well, tough shit. You need to record a replay live for that, and that also requires you to purchase a very expensive capture card that works for the 3DS that probably won't be useful for many other games at all. So, you know, tough luck. What's a bummer is that this first-person view doesn't really show off strats well either. You can make the argument that you can still tell what's happening, but at the end of the day, why are we forced into the suboptimal option? This kind of just sucks. Sending ghosts, as far as I know, is also not an option over Wi-Fi. Perhaps it's an option in a local multiplayer like MKDS, but I don't think it is. Maybe it has to do with Street Pass. I didn't play this game with friends offline like MKDS, so unfortunately I can't really tell you to begin with. Maybe you'll get a friend's ghost, but it's completely coincidental if you do, because the ghosts you get are randomized. The TT community was careful not to make the same errors that we did on Mario Kart Wii regarding glitches, so we only accepted non-shortcut times. This was a good change, but one the community made, not the game. Unfortunately, the game did not help us much with this. Mario Kart Wii had 4 licenses per Wii, but you only got 1 save file in this game. And hey, since friend codes were like by console instead of game now, maybe this was a positive so people didn't try to make alternate accounts as much, because they'd have to buy a second DS to do that, so fair enough. Unfortunately, if you wanted to do glitch PRs though, you lost your actual ghost for the track, and even if additionally you decide to only do 1 glitch PR, you better hope you wrote your old time down, because this game doesn't track your top 5s anymore, or your fastest laps for that matter. It's not that this is a gigantic deal, but it's just one of those things where you sit down and question, why is this gone now? It's not that it's a new feature that you just didn't think of. This is quite literally just a long-lasting feature of these games, where an active decision had to be made to remove it. There's no other way to put it. They just remove features for what seem to be arbitrary reasons. Like, well, let's spin the wheel of features and see which ones make the cut this time, instead of like actually thinking, would this be a good thing to have? So as you can tell, I'm disappointed by the efforts made into the TT system in this game. Even Mario Kart DS saved your top 5s. Hell, I even think it saved your vehicles for each of your top 5 times. What Mario Kart DS also had on single player was a versus mode with plenty of customizable options. This is another feature that has just gone MIA in Mario Kart 7. Now trust me, I'd be willing to overlook this one a little bit more because MK is supposed to be a multiplayer series, but I'm not going to overlook it this time because in my personal opinion, this is a necessary mode to have on a handheld Mario Kart game. Seriously, I think I played Versus Mode on Mario Kart Wii alone like once in my entire childhood. But on Mario Kart DS, man, that shit was clutch for road trips. When you finish every Grand Prix and mission with a 3-star rank, and the car is too bumpy to TT and set new records, this and the SM64 DS Rec Room, shoutouts by the way, were all I had for these car drives. Playing random tracks, teams maybe, it was fun. For me as a 10-year-old, I played around with my imagination. Sometimes I would play the team mode on MKDS and only pick Rainbow Road and be a lap down and try to make my team win by using Rob and trying to bump off all the other players on the other team, or starring them off on the loops. I talked to somebody else who did this before, I think it was my boy Luke, but I'm not sure. But you a real one if you ever did stupid shit like this when you were a kid. Off topic, but I remember doing stuff like this all the time when I was 10. Man, I had all the free time in the world back then and just wasted it. It sucks because I would love to have more free time now, and I feel like I don't have enough time to do whatever I need to do or want to do. And you know, this doesn't affect me anymore. I didn't grow up with MK7 like I did in MKDS, but a small hypothetical tear has been shed from my eye because I know that the new generation that was 6 years younger than me missed out on stuff like this because they left out Versus Mode. It really just sucks for a portable console because you know what? Every kid gets Mario Kart, and if you had limited resources, you have limited resources away from home. These games need to have as many options as possible. What they luckily did include was a battle mode, and even though I've been hard on this game's single-player modes so far, it doesn't mean I'm going to lighten up if the game deserves roasting. So let's talk about battle mode. Was it better than Mario Kart Wii's? I'm going to say yeah, it was. I played it less than Mario Kart Wii's battle mode, but this game didn't force you to play in teams like Mario Kart Wii. But next question, is the battle mode good? And no, it was not. It still had tons of the same problems as Mario Kart Wii's battle mode. It kept the same honestly bad modes that Mario Kart Wii had, Balloon Battle, the non-free-for-all version, and Coin Runners. The changes though, were that at least it was free-for-all now by default, like Battle should be, and that the clock changed from 3 minutes a match to 2. This, in my opinion, was just fine, doesn't really matter. Coin Runners was way less punishing in this game as well, and Coin Runners also now capped you at 10 coins maximum. This on paper sounds like a bad change, but I think it was a fine change. There were less coins in general now, which made it slightly more like Shine Runners, though it was still far from off from that greatness. But the point that I'll make was that this wasn't a reckless decision, it was actually like a fair feeling move. The bad thing is that it promoted defense over approaching people with 10 coins because there's no incentive to go in anymore. At least the maps were way smaller in this game in Mario Kart Wii, so it forced confrontation a little in that way. I think in many matches, nobody will finish with 10 coins. Regardless, despite making slight adjustments to the battle mode, I can't help but feel that this is like tweaking a D paper to be like a D+. I'm not having it. Go back to free-for-all in my opinion. For some reason, also, there were less options in this mode than Mario Kart Wii's offline mode. For example, it always just ended after 4 stages no matter what. I guess it's not a big deal though. The local multiplayer I said I didn't play earlier, but I admittedly tried it once, randomly. It was with a 7-year-old cousin at a family get-together. So, you know, it wasn't really fun for me, but like, I was just trying to entertain like a kid. What I did pick up was that even though we only had one game cart, we were able to play every track in the game instead of just the first 8 like Mario Kart DS with only one game cart. So at least it made it an improvement in this one area. Good job, MK7. The guy that I was playing with seemed to be entertained and having fun, so you know, whatever. This change was almost irrelevant though, but you know, at least they made a change that made sense to begin with, because they sure as hell didn't make many others with the modes in this game. Another thing that I'll give credit to in this game was for making an attempt to customize matches just a little in private lobbies, whether it be versus or battle. You could actually set what items would appear. I believe the options were shells, bananas, bombs, and mushrooms only, as well as no items for races. While a valiant effort, this fell short, and it was developed only a little. Perhaps it's dangerous to give us players too much control over the item system because nobody would join an oddly specific match online, but I felt like these modes just weren't thought of too much. Shells and mushrooms only were actually pretty fun for races. Shells was just chaos because you could get more than one item, being greens, reds, blues, triples, etc. It was just a chaotic fun mess. Mushrooms only was quite fun for 1v1 races in honesty, and even though it was definitely flawed, it still was a little fun, I think, for driving/strat practice online of mushrooms. No items was a piece of shit because it gave you no option to turn off coins. If you started in first and weren't bad, you won. It was hardly an achievement. You did not have to be good to keep a lead if you hogged all the coins. Luckily, they offered an alternative with no items or coins in MK8, but this wasn't a great solution either, because it just felt too slow. Bananas and bombs only did not really work for races. In battles, it was more interesting, but I'd rather just play with normal items in honesty. It's like they wanted to say you could play Bob on Blast in MK7, but without actually giving us Bob on Blast, which would be carrying like 5 bombs at a time. I appreciate the effort, but it came up a little short this time. For speedrunners, the item switch would have been nice. I could see mushrooms only being an interesting category in this game since the coin item didn't exist in first place, and it'd be a guaranteed shroom in first every set if I'm remembering correctly. But with no versus mode, any speedrun you do in this game is going to have to be the Grand Prix modes with items. Again, not the end of the world, it just comes back to the common theme. This game has no flexibility compared to the last two in the series especially. The Wi-Fi in this game worked, I guess. There are 3 options now. From memory, I don't remember this game having a regional mode, but I think the options were just worldwide friends and communities. Worldwide races were everything they needed to be. I think perhaps worldwide races could have rivaled Mario Kart Wii's Wi-Fi in some aspects and how fun it was. And the comeback factor was still there, and out of the recent MKs, this is by far the best performer in my opinion when it came to just general Wi-Fi bullshit. Perhaps it was the easiest to do so since there was only a maximum of 8 players per match, unlike the other games. But when you hit someone in this game, you hit someone. It was nice to not feel cheated over missing somebody, and like starring somebody like 5 times and not hitting them because lag. If you star someone and don't hit them, you can adjust until you do, like many times, and feel absolutely certain when you do hit them. This even goes for basic red shells too. If you hit somebody, you hit somebody. No BS. No longer will opponents just lag through items. The game was great in this sense. The netcode was definitely better than Wii's and 8's combined, and it just makes me upset that we're not close to this in later games. One additional funny thing about the Wi-Fi in MK7 is if somebody was really toxic, and I mean lagging the item wheel or something, the game just wouldn't know where to rank them on every base screen. They would quite literally just make the lobby unplayable and appear on everyone's screen in 8th place for the whole race, practically frozen, rendering the shock unobtainable. Now you may say this is a severe weak point of the netcode, but I actually liked it this way more. This way, you knew which races needed to be discounted. This way, the game exposed whoever's net was filthy by showing exactly who was locked in at 8th place. There's no bullshit. I would rather have a solid experience most of the time and occasionally have a race that just doesn't count due to bullshit, where the game naturally informs everyone who the problem is. Honestly, I'd take this any day over what we've got now, considering how many races I've played in MK8 that were ruined by lag, but people just acted like it was fine because the results popped up. Really, it's a shame. If you were toxic in 7 and it was blatant, like the races were discountable, and if you weren't toxic, the game felt completely fair lag-wise. Really, this was awesome. The only problem I ever had happened 2 or 3 times with the Wi-Fi, and sometimes the track selected would be different for 1 or 2 people in the room for no reason at all. I played a race on Waluigi Pinball, and Sam played a race on Calamari Desert once, the same race. It was really weird, and I think these instances were extreme outliers. It never happened to be in an official match, so it's not a big deal to me. This was the game that introduced the spectator queue. 2 people could spectate races while waiting to get in. This was a good start, and it was improved upon in MK8 by being able to jump around, like the players in the lobby on the spectating mode. And it was improved more on MK8D by adding the lap count, because now people would know how long they had before the lobby started. This was a good change, though I think some lobbies just took forever to get into. Overall, my Wi-Fi experience was positive in this game, though some of the weirder lobbies would just suck you into a string of only SNES Rainbow Road being picked. The only issues I had with Worldwides, I think, were the VR grinders. They honestly were the spiritual successor to the roster assholes back on Mario Kart Wii who literally spent hours crafting their friend roster threads on the old MKW site. At least this game had 100 friend slots, but there existed some sweaty people who would leave if a single player with lower VR joined the room because they were that obsessed with gaining a number since it went up to 99,000 now. It was kind of pathetic. Funny enough, some of the people in the 10k range were better than the VR grinders themselves, but they wanted no part in playing these better players because it'd slow up their robotic process of getting to max VR. The friends list was fine. It's pretty self-explanatory. You add friends and you can join them. I do have one complaint though, and that was the friend list was capped at like they kept records. It capped you at 999 wins. This sucks because it prevents accurate records for being taken with your most played opponents. It was never a problem for me, though I did get close to a handful of people maxing out. The issue here, I think, was that Mario Kart Wii counted to at least 9,999 and maybe even more. It comes back full circle to my points earlier. Why just be worse for no reason whatsoever than the last game? It's baffling. Like, it's not a big deal, but like, why? Well, why be worse? Communities were very interesting, but to sum things up, they were a kick in the balls. These were how you played custom games online with Grand Prix-like scores. You can make these communities public and they had leaderboards. The best players wouldn't excel on these leaderboards, but instead, the people who just sank the most hours into their lives grinding in that specific community would be rewarded on the leaderboards. For me, I just felt annoyed by how grind-happy this game became as opposed to Mario Kart Wii. It's like there was a lack of content, so they just compensated by letting people grind the same stuff over and over for a sense of self-satisfaction. The thing that sucks about the satisfaction is that the people who grind aren't doing anything impressive. They're just wasting more time on doing a redundant activity. There's no pushing of limits here, and anybody could achieve this if they put enough time into it. This may be a hard truth for some people, but it is a truth. If VR grinding is your thing and you enjoy it, don't let me stop you from having the fun. I just don't understand you, I guess. Back on Mario Kart Wii, everybody got to max VR pretty easily, and people just played for fun. They played to get better, I guess, and to play in good lobbies. I wish it was more like that in this game. Back on topic, however, communities, while made as a public feature, were the only way to host private matches like team matches or organized free-for-alls. This fucking sucked compared to being able to open rooms in Mario Kart Wii, because of a few reasons. First of all, the rooms felt laggier to join the Mario Kart Wii rooms. But that's not even the big problem here. One of the problems was that these rooms had a timer set. After I believe the second person joined a room, a hidden timer would start, and after 5 minutes the room would automatically start no matter how many people were in the room. And this sucked, because if there were only 7 people in the room, tough shit, you had to restart the joining process. This is just objectively worse than Mario Kart Wii's room races in every way imaginable. Mario Kart Wii's rooms had no timers, had more options for like matches like versus or battle, and also just had more options for messages on top of that, if that even mattered. But guess what? The timer I just mentioned, that wasn't the big problem either. The big problem was that these communities were public and they couldn't be made private. Anyone could join them, so while a new community wouldn't be seen by anybody if you just didn't spread the code, they were still out there for anyone to join if they had the friend code for the community. So people had to be very careful about posting community friend codes. Like for FFAs, if you had like 5 rooms, you'd have to like DM people or like post it in a private chat so room trolls wouldn't join. On top of this, your recent opponents could also join you, or if you have idiots on your friend list, they could join your rooms as well. So everyone had to hide their online status before joining official rooms, and if one person messed up and someone joined them, yikes. This is actually another benefit of having 8-player matches. It lowered the chance of a brain malfunction and the rooms could actually get started more frequently. Now, I played many matches on 7. This is only a problem for a handful in hindsight, especially after the first year when less casual players were on the game. But again, why? Why can't we just have private friend rooms as an option? It's just a lack of flexibility. We got by fine, it was just not optimal. And if communities help progress anything, at least now we had the option of choosing the engine class a war would be played in. So from here on out, we no longer have to play 100 and Mir online, just 150, so that's splendid, I guess. One interesting thing about this game was that you can't go backwards or stop completely for very long without disconnecting. I like to joke that this change was a direct response to Mario Kart Wii's metagame, but we don't really know that in fairness. It's kind of sad because it prevents stupid for fun matches where you explore tracks or drive backwards, but I think the change is probably for the greater good. It prevents trolls from targeting people as well, which is probably why it was changed, and maybe as a response to the hacking outbreak on Mario Kart Wii 2. Of course, considering private rooms don't exist in this game anyway, I guess it makes sense, but they doubled down on this in MK8, even with the return of private rooms, so I suppose I'm thankful for this because it destroys lap-down bagging for the most part, though the game's also nerfed bagging to begin with as well. It's just a bummer that there's no more like silly sessions where you just drive around tracks like randomly with your friends and like do stuff like the Quacker Challenge, if you've ever seen that. If you haven't seen that, you should look it up, it's kind of dope. There were a few other randy options on the bottom part of the main menu, called the Mario Kart channel. Now, I get that the Wii was TV themed with the Wii remotes and channels on the home screen and all that stuff, but I don't know why they named this thing the Mario Kart channel MK7. I suppose it's not a big deal though. But the MK channel was pretty much a Street Pass thing and a place for settings. So if your 3DS, if you walk by somebody else with another 3DS, your DSs would send data to each other. This was never the selling point of a 3DS to me, and I don't think it should be for anybody else either. It should be the games. But I suppose it was a nice addition. More content? Why not? The game needs it anyway. Granted, this is very little extra content, but I guess it was something. You got to set your own profile on this channel and look at your stats like coin count, star ranking, VR, wins, losses, etc. You could set your favorite vehicle and make your own custom Grand Prix of your favorite tracks as well. You could also read your stats, like I think I mentioned, and there was some wonky in-game criteria that tried to figure out what kind of racer you are that constantly updates. If you're a piece of trash that just likes to try to bag for power items to crush the souls of casuals by giving them the mere illusion that they think that they can win, or you're just a harmless Mancolor fan who likes to item smuggle, perhaps the game would call you a comeback king or something silly like that. Anyways, when you street pass somebody, you get to see their stats and play their GP, or like that they made their custom Grand Prix, or face off against their time trials. Though it seems like random which track it picks. I guess this answers my question earlier from sending Ghost data. Maybe it is random though. But the Grand Prix was interesting, I think, because you got to play against the Grand Prix they chose and against their Mii character with 6 other AI, and their Mii character was programmed to play like their in-game description title thing. That's all fine and dandy. Now, I mentioned it earlier, but one thing I like to do when I was like really bored was to, holy crap, play the Street Pass Grand Prix. For me, I figured it out that if somebody didn't set their custom Grand Prix, the courses were just randomized. So when I finally passed somebody who had a somewhat competent record on the game, I got to access 150cc Grand Prix with 4 randomized track. This is something you quite literally cannot do because of the lack of a versus mode, so I played these on occasion to pass time when I was really bored. This is where I like to use first-person gyro controls also, because I felt like a hard mode challenge. I always thought this was like a stupid kind of fun, which is sad, because in order to play a single random Grand Prix, I had to exploit the game just to set it up. Regardless, it was kind of cool. I never played the TTs because literally all 60 people I passed over the years were never more than 10k VR or had like a single TT that would be better than like a 125 on Toad Circuit, which was barely faster than my day one time where I didn't understand what coins did yet. Anyways, that's about all the modes on MK7 unless I'm missing something. Perhaps the biggest loss was a lack of mission mode or competitions in any way. Not to just shit on this game for not having perhaps my favorite modes, but I'm going to be real here. It's like they didn't even try to add any extra spice to this game. The lack of so many basic features was almost insulting, and I get that they probably rushed the game. And I suppose we should be thankful that we were even able to play online matches in this game, because that wasn't even a guarantee of how few options there were. But, you know, there's not really an excuse. I'll be honest, I still had a lot of fun playing MK7 because the game offered very fun gameplay and a new take on the series, but it felt like the most basic MK they could have possibly made. I think the reason why 7 doesn't get more respect is because it's not controversial, it's just there. It's a solid and fun experience, but what are we remembering from it? Again, this section is a little opinionated, so I'll try to focus on talking about the overall balance of the track roster. But in my personal opinion, this game's track roster is one of the most interesting in the series. This is because, in my opinion, it has some of the best tracks in the entire series, like a really solid top 10 tracks, but I think it has a pretty weak bottom tier. The amount of bagging focus tracks, I guess, is a much healthier number in my opinion. But on the contrary, I think the bagging tracks just didn't come as much because the tracks in this game were like Luigi Raceway and Calamari Desert, and they just weren't as fun as tracks like Mario Raceway or Delfino Square. I think that an issue with the tracks at large in this game is that they got a little obsessed with the new gliding mechanic. As a result, there were a lot of jumps in this game where there were no safe landing spot for quite a while, and when you add the touchscreen minimap, targeting people off a track can be done relatively accurately in this game with a shock. The general rule is that if you fall off in the first half of a glider section, you're going to respawn behind the glider panel and be forced to take it again. This was a bit devastating also, especially when you consider you're losing 6 coins as well, which is over half the inventory. Sections like that are especially bothersome, and they consist on the gliders of Daisy Hills, Shy Guy Bazaar, Piranha Plant Slide, Maka Woohoo, Mushroom Gorge, and Airship Fortress. Considering these glider sections are long and at the end of each track, they were very bothersome. To start off, I think Toad Circuit and Mario Circuit are possibly the best designed circuit duo in the recent games. I think they both have just the right amount of off-road and were pretty fun in their own right. The final cut on Toad Circuit is much less free to take optimally than most cuts in the game, and spamming Goldens in the middle of the track on MC doesn't really work because of the castle section. I think they're both pretty satisfying to play and have one of the best circuit themes in the entire series. I believe Cheep Cheep Lagoon is a really insulting track personally. Clearly, it's meant to be the follow-up to Cheep Cheep Beach on the DS, but unlike its predecessor, it lacks almost any satisfying driving whatsoever. I'm entirely convinced that the only reason that they created this track was to show off underwater driving in the game's demo. The only problem is that the underwater driving does nothing to make the gameplay more interesting. It just kinda sucks, and this track is pretty much just entirely that. At the very least, I have much better things to say about the more advanced water track, Wario Shipyard. This track actually implements underwater driving quite well because it offers multiple ideas of things to do with it. Unlike Cheep Cheep Lagoon, there are multiple re-entries to underwater sections through ramps, which allows for multiple diving boosts, which is really the only interesting thing about underwater driving to begin with. The track has more fun ideas of pipes blowing water at you, and as far as I'm aware, the track is also one of the only water-focused tracks to date that isn't just like a super similar design like an oval. I also thought it was a cool touch that the track was based on the original Wario Land game, which is a cool callback to a series that hasn't seen a new entry since MK7 came out. I think Shipyard also did something that CCL failed to achieve for the game's meta as well. Because Wario's Shipyard is actually somewhat complex and forces you to make more than one turn underwater, the track gives a nice advantage to wooden tires, which is exploitable against the meta combo, monster tires. To reiterate earlier, I think having busted combos is a good thing, but I also think having more than one feasible option is personally good for the game to fit other playstyles. Some other tracks that were nice for benefiting sharp turns include Music Park, Pinball, Dino Dino Jungle, Airship Fortress. Even before I knew how good the monster tires were, I loved all these tracks, and I think this game made me realize I prefer tracks with lots of sharp turns. I was glad that all these tracks were in the game because I think it made some different strategies work in matches. Back in the 7 days, I would play as HE's bagger for the most part, and use wooden and mushroom tires. If and when these tracks got picked, I would shift my focus to trying to front run because I had a mass advantage on these tracks. I thought it was a fun strategy since speed didn't matter as much when I was bagging, so if it picked other tracks, cool, I would just do the pack play or like bagging work. Everybody remembers the two Woohoo Island tracks for good reason. I was never a big fan of them and felt like they didn't really have a great place in Mario Kart, but they were inserted into the game regardless as one-lap tracks, something that the game experimented with for the first time in series history. And I'm not a big fan of these tracks because I feel like they're abnormal in the sense that you can backspam almost without punishment. Because the game gives you so much defense as well in the front, I think it's a little broken. The most broken things about these tracks were how glitchy they were. Maka Woohoo, the worst one of the two in my opinion, was completely ruined by its glitch. Everyone spam picked that track online in order to cheese wins for VR, so it pretty much ruined worldwide mode for a few months. To their credit, they actually fixed this as well as the less devastating glitches like on Woohoo Loop and Bowser Castle 1. There were actually a lot of glitches in this game that weren't patched later, but in honesty I was okay with this, and I don't think they ruined Wi-Fi with the initial group of them. There were three that stood out in particular. One was on DK Jungle. I remember this one existing before the patch, so they definitely missed this somehow, and it was one of the more insulting ones to miss of the three I'm mentioning here. I thought it was funny how in the first MK8 trailer we saw DK Jungle come back, and just to tie up any loose ends, they quite literally just made a wall at the spot that the glitch was in MK7 to prevent people from even trying. I thought that was a funny fix, even if it was perhaps lazy, but you know, it makes sense, it works. Personally, I thought DK Jungle was a little narrow in MK7 in that it wasn't very satisfying to play. I think they fixed it very well in MK8 at least, glitch aside, and that was a good design that just didn't work well with MK7's physics. Daisy Cruiser was another returning track, and I think they did a really good job with this remake. The tables were not as annoying, and the pool being able to be driven through I think makes the track a little better too. I also think that the two paths at the beginning was a good change, as well as the storage path now being underwater. There was a glitch on this track, but you could only perform it with a small character without monster tires, so it wasn't really a problem. Neo Bowser City was, in my opinion, one of the better new tracks in the game, with a very cool design. The rain makes much of the road slippery, but it doesn't really hinder the gameplay in my opinion. This track utilizes the mechanics of the game very well, I think. The glitch on this track, I think, was super cool, much in the same way that BC Wii's glitch was cool in Mario Kart Wii. It took time to set up, was moderately difficult, and infused the game's physics in a clever way. And it was a solid time cut, yet very costly if you failed it. I criticized Cheep Cheep Lagoon earlier for quite literally being a track made for a demo. Rock Mountain was kind of the same here in Aussie, but for gliding instead of underwater driving. I at least like the premise of Rock Mountain a lot more though. The ending is quite a cool idea, going up the mountain with boulders falling down at you. The big problem with this track though, however, is that a golden cut later in the lap. It saves way too much time, cuts an absurd amount of time, and this made this track probably the MK7 equivalent of Delfino Square on Mario Kart Wii for that reason. I felt like it was a game that died a lot, and what could have been a great track in my opinion was just somewhat ruined. I was never a fan of Rosalina's Ice World, and it was mainly because of the beginning of the course. There was a rather precise shortcut at the beginning of this track, and the shortcut honestly made the track super degenerate. It was very risky. Everyone would attempt at the beginning and push each other off. It was honestly a miracle if you made it, even if you were skilled at it. And let me tell you, the respawn was terrible too. The alternative was taking a much slower turn that was angled and narrow, almost like a CT fashion. By that I mean custom tracks, just bad design. After making it through this section, you got an extremely narrow underwater section where you would frequently get killed by blue shells, followed by some very unfriendly turns in terms of getting MTs consistently. Blue shells were killers in the underwater section, and the end was alright, I think. There aren't many, but there are a few turns in this game that felt to me like they just did not agree with the physics of this game. This track has them, as well as Mushroom Gorge and DK Jungle. Mushroom Gorge felt completely awful in this game. The final glider was optimal because the other path was just ass in this game, possibly due to the trick nerf, but the glider could also let you take the previous gap jump in Mario Kart Wii, but felt quite bad compared to the gap jump. It was not hard to get across at all, but the gliders were just not the most responsive on this cut, I found. Many of the turns early in the track felt like the ones on Rosalina's Ice World. You would just drift normally and not get MTs quickly or even at all. You could get MTs, and you could always get MTs, and maybe some of this was me being bad, don't get me wrong, but it felt like you had to hit the track in a specific way. Maybe some people know what I'm talking about, perhaps, but maybe you don't. The mushrooms also felt so weird in this game compared to Mario Kart Wii. They were so flat now, I feel like you didn't have much variance in how you used them. Perhaps this was a response to getting, quote, gorged in Mario Kart Wii, but it felt like they just dumbed down the track as a result, if that makes sense. I felt that this track did not make a good transition at all in this game. Luckily, most of the other retro tracks were handled superbly and upgraded. Koopa Troopa Beach adapted well with the underwater driving and glider panels. The notorious shortcut from 64 is still there, but now is an optimal shroomless route and doesn't cut nearly as much time as it did in MK64. It was just part of the normal line now. And this is a huge plus because it normalizes a cool route and didn't completely destroy the balance of the track. I really enjoyed this remake. DS Luigi's Mansion also feels much better to play now because of a nice glider cut, and even more importantly, the final section of the track was much more satisfying to drive on now, even without monster tires. The mud section was force off-road that felt a little too loose in the DS version in my opinion. Though I mentioned it earlier, Dino Jungle, Waluigi Pinball, and Airship Fortress felt way more smooth to play in this game. Dino Jungle had a pretty awesome glider cut that I mentioned earlier that would have only been possible in this game because it takes advantage of 7's glider physics that 8 would not be able to handle. It allows you to cut the last turn of the track off entirely, all without letting go of the A button, and you can land with a super mini turbo if you're good enough. The mushroom cut is now doable even without a boost as well, making a new path the standard. Additionally, this track is way less bumpy in this game. Pinball and Fortress both now use the new glider mechanics for their cannons, but to me the biggest upgrades here were just the physics of the game. At MKDS they were cool tracks, but they had some pretty rough turns. For example, it was more optimal to not mini turbo in the tower at the end of Airship Fortress in MKDS, but now it's optimal to get an SMT once in the tower, along with the new braking mechanic. For brake drifting, I mean. Likewise, on Pinball, the 270-degree turn was something that needed hops in MKDS, but the nicer physics of 7 allowed you to take the turn normally. I felt that SNES Mario Circuit 2 was also got a nice upgrade, as the ending glider was a nice strategy and the ramp allowed for some fun cuts that weren't originally offered, as well as making a small off-road cut right before the glider. Perhaps no track got a bigger upgrade in my opinion than DK Pass, however. I felt like this track was bound to always be a slippery and bumpy mess. Looking back, I feel like it would have been I feel like it would have been a big mess in Mario Kart Wii or Mario Kart 8. Maybe not Deluxe, but those two for sure. I feel like 7 was the perfect game to bring this track back in because the smooth physics of the game complement this track very well. It was super bumpy in MKDS and notorious for it. This game practically fixes those frustrations completely, and it's something I think would have stayed for sure in Mario Kart Wii, despite Wii being similar to 7. It was just more bumpy. It had more control over everything, but 7 definitely had more satisfying ordinary racing lines and not many bumps in comparison. Adding monster tires that handle off-road well to the mix, this is just the perfect game to bring DK Pass back for, and I enjoyed it a lot. Of course, there's an elephant in the room here, and it's that one item box. I originally thought that the item box was a glitch, and that no way they'd put a star or triple shrooms box in an ordinary track. I thought it was just poor coding due to one of the missions in MKTS giving out star and triple shroom boxes on this track. But even if it was a glitch, Nintendo decided to double down on this item box, so now this game had a special item box as well. To be honest, I think it's okay. It was a little controversial, but I'm okay with it. It's like a custom track-like move, but I'm okay with it considering it's just one occurrence. It makes for an interesting decision at the beginning of the race. Do I maintain first, or do I go off-road to get the box? The decision may change with combo also. Technically, it could reward front-running too. Now, in 4 versus 4 matches, people with a shock may have to focus on dodging first or not, and whether or not, like, it's worth it to dodge first if it meant, like, dodging other people. Like, you could just accept that somebody won the race already, and, like, first place can mess up shocks, or just make it a guaranteed win. And it's a little bit of a different discussion, I guess, you can have, whether or not it's worth it to dodge first or not, or try a different route. It's a very interesting track, I'll give it that. Luigi Raceway and Kalimari Desert are interesting tracks. I don't necessarily think that they're worse because they aren't, but at the end of the day, they're just luck tracks that depend on getting mushrooms late. They're your standard Mario Raceway type of tracks, but less fun in my opinion. I don't know how to, quote, objectively rate them because of this, but they're fine, I guess? Like, I think they're better now, even if RNG focused. What I can appreciate about Kalimari Desert now is how they use glider mechanics to allow players, with or even without mushrooms, to skip the forced train stoppings. I think they realized that it was funny in 1996, but that people getting stopped by trains should have at least some counterplay, so good change. You may have noticed I haven't commented on the other 3 Wii tracks yet, and for me, I was never really a huge fan of them, and I don't know why really, but I personally have no thoughts on KC, or Koopa Cape. The underwater part actually being underwater is cool, I suppose, and the way monsters change up the track is interesting also. I felt like this track was definitely harder in MK7, but not necessarily better or worse. I think it was by a little, honestly, and it was a little less of a bore. Maple Treeway and Coconut Mall, however, I can't help but feel were dumbed down a little. I feel like these tracks, while not overly complicated, I suppose, had a lot of little things in Mario Kart Wii that made them into some of the most skill-based running tracks in the game here. And while Coconut Mall is definitely a running track in this game, I feel like it's more because it's hard to catch up on than it is just like strats, like letting you like just get better than everybody else. CM was weird in this game because the consensus was that starting in the back was busted and quickly taking out the front would reward you a race win because there was a lot of straight at the beginning and people with goldens and stars would overwhelm the people in the front. For some reason, I still always preferred CM in 7, but maybe it's because I wasn't really good at it in Mario Kart Wii. I find Maple Treeway to just be a worse version of the Wii version. I suppose it's fine, but it feels like it's just there. It's alright. The cannon has the new physics, maybe that's better. I kind of missed the net at the end, though perhaps the net was a little suspect when you got hit on it. I think this is just one of those tracks where you miss full trick boost a little. The glitches on Koopa Cape and Maple Treeway were interesting because they felt so difficult to pull off that I never really saw people abusing them on anything outside of TT, so, not really a big deal, I suppose. SNES Rainbow Road. It was honestly a huge piece of shit in this game, and for some reason everyone always spammed it in Worldwide. Maybe it was because it was the shortest track in the game and people were always sweaty VR grinders, but I don't want to believe that. But I know how sweaty people are over VR grinding, so, maybe I'll talk about that more in a different video. But anyways, I was disappointed in this remake. It looked like everything it should have visually. The only problem is just how it was played now. The combos in this game were quite big and the track was ridiculously narrow. Add overpowered draft boosts and some trick ramps, and holy crap, this was a fucking mess. To top it all off, there was one respawn that was so bad that later in the lap, if you got the respawn boost and didn't try to slow down significantly after, you were just falling off again. I have no idea why so many people liked it in this game. I thought it was just annoying, which is sad for the original Rainbow Road. I think it was at least given more justice in 8's DLC packs. There's one more track I obviously need to discuss. A few others I haven't touched up on much at all. All I can say is that Daisy Hills, Piranha and Slide, Shy Guy Bazaar, they're all just alright. I'm not a big fan of them. They're not the worst. Bowser's Castle 1 I really liked in Super Circuit, but I felt it was just kind of weird in this game and had weird physics. All the way from hopping the walls to just hopping off the road in general. And, I guess another thing I didn't touch up on was the strat that we called Pasta. Pretty much it was just climbing the walls and driving off them. It offered some very interesting strats on this track and even more notably Mario Circuit 2. I think it was cool. It's cool to have a strat that you just call Pasta, so that's cool, I guess. Bowser's Castle, I think it was good. Not great, but good. It was one of my favorite tracks of Time Trial. I really liked the outdoor section and felt like the whole shroom spot and underwater section was a bit shaky. It wasn't the worst though. But the last track I want to mention is obviously Rainbow Road, the new one. Holy shit, the casual player just loves this track. They adore it, and I'm really not sure why at all. I felt like it was hardly a Rainbow Road, I guess. Most like RRs, I remember having some fun ramps and spirals and stuff, but this one always just felt a little slow to me. Some of the cuts are cool, like the streamless glider and the jump at the end, but like, it felt just a little boring to me, I guess. I didn't dig the planet theme at all, and felt the moon section was more of an annoyance than an add-on. It felt unsatisfying to drive for me. The glider section on Sector 3 was whack as fuck, and constantly, like, I mean, there's no consistency, it felt, with it. And, you know, maybe it's because I was just, like, bad at the track. It was a nice concept, I guess. And in honesty, this is mostly subjective. I just never had fun actually driving on this track. Like, it looked cool and everything, and you know what? I think it's fair. I can respect others' like opinions on this track being fun. I just don't see how people are calling this track the greatest ever. And trust me, I've seen this as a common opinion. That's what baffles me. I feel like half the race here is just waiting for the next section without much going on. I thought maybe one lap tracks are like this in general, but Mount Wario and Big Blue made me kind of like the concept more in MK8. And I don't think it's close to being the best track ever, let alone one of the best RRs ever. And a lot of the former 7 players agreed with me on this one. I feel like there's two types of people here. There are RR7 lovers and people who played 7 at a higher level. It's wild. No shade to those who love RR7 though. Shoutouts to Goku. I know, like, I don't think I've ever seen someone more committed to a single track than this guy with this track. But you know, it's just not my cup of tea. As for battle stages, I don't have like very in-depth opinions of them. In reality, I don't really play battle mode much because, quite frankly, the mode was not worth playing. But you know, the stages themselves, they were okay. Palm Shore was always a favorite of mine in MKDS, and it's a no-brainer here with the underwater mechanic. And to me, in this game, underwater only made things feel clunkier in general. However, in this specific instance, I felt the opposite, because I remember the feeling of being trapped underwater in MKDS during the tides, and this was simply not a hindrance on the gameplay at all with actual underwater driving implemented now. The actual grass patches were a little more of an annoyance, but overall, it was nice to play this one again. They really took a lot of content from MKDS into this game, and I think that was nice considering, like, in a way, this could be seen as the follow-up to that game. This is considering that MKDS had the most amount of returning card frames and tied the most returning tracks and battle stages. What was special to me, I suppose, was not only that MKDS was my first MK game, but that they brought back so many actual relevant content from that game, including some of the fan-favorite tracks, the cover card, and the best card in the game. Big Donut I was never a big fan of. It's okay. The gliding was a cool addition. It's just alright though. I'd rather have double-decker block for it. Battle Course 1 exists, I guess. Nothing to say here. It's fine. The 3 new courses were alright. I think I like Sherbet Rink the most and Honey Hive, the Honeybee Hive the least. Woohoo Town I enjoyed more in Deluxe, but I think it's just because it feels bigger in that game and that's less spammed online due to MK's track select system for worldwides. Of course, you could go into the basketball court on Deluxe. My only gripe for Honeybee Hive is that it felt a little clunky. The paths between rooms were narrow and the pipe in the center flung you to a halt wherever you fell. Sherbet Rink I enjoyed, but it was just okay. Another gripe is they got very lazy with the battle music here, as they're all the same melody for new stages, which is just a direct downgrade from Mario Kart Wii. That being said, I appreciate that they at least tried to make new battle stages in this game, unlike a future offender. I think, of course, music is a matter of taste and a subjective topic, but there is one significant change in this game that was made for the music, and I really do enjoy this change a lot. Starting in this game, the game offers a separate drum beat that comes in super naturally whenever you build a lead or front run. This is actually a minor change, but these are the kind of things that some Nintendo games have that just feel special to me. It's an extra bit of charm. They didn't have to implement this into the game, but they did to make the product better. I suppose the only argument against this change is that it can make you more nervous, and that it should have an off switch, but I think this is ludicrous. It adds to the suspense of being in first in a game like MK, where there's no certainties in anything, and I also feel like it's an empowering feeling too. I would understand that adding pressure in a mode like Time Trial, like where you need to focus, like I get that, but let's be real here. If you're TTing and have any sort of pressure, you shouldn't be hearing these beats no matter the occasion. Unless you're on a historically great world record pace, I suppose. Good luck if that's the case. When I just feel like relaxing and playing with sound though, this was a huge plus, I think. Really, it's a nice touch. The music itself, I think it's not really great in this game. Up until MK8, I never really thought twice about the soundtrack of an MK game. It's sufficient, not great, but sufficient. Some of my favorite tracks in this game, music-wise, include the Circuit theme, the Rock Mountain, and Bowser Castle themes. Before I start, I just want to say that the item distribution is probably the best thing this game has going for it. I don't think the item system at large is the best in the series, and I'll explain more on this in future videos, but I think if you're looking for a good game of classic MK, you can't go wrong with this one. If you're just a casual fan of the series that's for some reason watching me overanalyze these games, first of all, welcome, but secondly, if you want to play a Mario Kart game without ruining your friendships, this may be one to consider taking a look at. The items in this game are pretty similar to Mario Kart Wii's. I guess the big difference is that the team felt that all Mario Kart Wii's new items were toxic trash, so they removed them in favor of potentially even more trash, new replacements, that we'll get to probably near the end of this section. The first thing I want to address is the removal of the fake item box. I'm not going to make a claim on whether or not this is for the better or not. This is one of the decisions where I can deal with the cards that they dealt me, I guess, but I don't think it's game-breaking or anything, but it is interesting because they reintroduced the coin in MK8 as an item. This is the only modern Mario Kart game where you can pull an item in first place, online at least, not sure if you can get shrooms or in single players, and you'll get defense guaranteed. That's crazy, in honesty. This change alone effectively makes redding first place actually brutal, and because of how the game naturally plays out with coin respawns being so slow, my first thought is, holy crap, they really buffed first place a lot in this game. And honestly, it makes sense. Mario Kart Wii's item system was so fundamentally crazy that even the casual audience complained that there were too many blue shells. There were so many that it made mid-level players sometimes struggle to win cups on 150cc. I think perhaps Nintendo realized that they went too far on the blue shell in Mario Kart Wii, so they made it more beneficial towards first place now. Now, what's interesting here is that even if ever so slightly, they actually increase the probabilities of blue shells appearing in this game. But to say that they're worse for first place is an illusion, because on top of first place just being buffed in general now, the other notable change was how the blue shell operated. The blue shell lost its wings now in this game, and now travels on the road. Though in theory, it could not be too difficult to dodge, this item actually is a pretty big pain in the ass to most players on the track because of how quick and seemingly spontaneous the movements of it can be. Odds are that somebody on the track is in a line that's not going to be easy to play around the blue, and it'll get hit by it in a very inconvenient manner, and I think this honestly sucks. I get that they wanted to make the item less destructive to first place, but I think the approach just makes the shell even more annoying to more players than it is just one person. I think perhaps a better route would be to create an item obtainable in first that could be used to stop the shell, but no such item was made for this game, unfortunately. Maybe it'd be a good idea down the road, though. Because the blue shell is grounded in this game, the justification here is that the blue shell probably should be obtained in further back spots so it can hit more players, and because its overall destruction power got buffed. It should be a better item, so more people in the back should crave it. The problem is, not that the pack doesn't need even more shit to hit them, but that the item is not a satisfying one to pull regardless, in the back especially. In a game like 7, getting a blue shell in a free-for-all is not really going to help you as much as another power item would, and if you get it in a 4v4 and the opponents have a star around you, you might as well just call it game over and take your last place and hold the blue shell for first, I guess. I thought that in Mario Kart Wii, pulling a blue in a higher spot like 4th was a bit of a treat. There's generally a direct benefit to you. In last place, you just want to catch up, not pull a blue shell, even if it hits more people now. Potentially, that is. It doesn't always. There were some other good blue changes, though, that made them less of a bother to first. The first is that you no longer go flying in the air when you get hit by it, but instead you flip over, which is still slow, but it's still better than the more powerful explosion. The other thing to note is that you can spin out in a direction now, and sometimes even be pushed forward a little bit, so this can help you in close calls on the finish line. Perhaps the best gain out of the blue shell now, though, is that when hit by it, you no longer lose your held item if it wasn't being trailed already, and this is huge. This was one of my least favorite parts about Mario Kart Wii blue shells, just the fact that they leave you defenseless afterwards and vulnerable to more attacks. I like that they just make red shells better in this game, but also nerf the cheap shotting options that they add in Mario Kart Wii. I dig this change a lot. Perhaps the other thing to consider regarding blues in this game is that falling off, the falling off downtime got nerfed a lot. So sometimes falling off intentionally would be pretty quick, and you could fall off for blues instead of taking it, and you can get a respawn boost in this game. So sometimes players would just fall off and the blue is about to hit them, and they would use the respawn boost upon landing to get back to top speed more quickly. This was generally a faster option due to the removal of standstill mini turbo if you're using Metal Mario and monsters for sure, but the downside is if you mistimed it, and honestly it was easier to mistime than it was to time right, you lose 6 coins. So pick your poisons, I suppose. Regardless, even if the blue shell is potentially more common in this game than Mario Kart Wii, the whole coin ordeal has buffed first place a ton in this game. Red shells got buffed pretty hard in this game. This may have been another reason the game offered more defense than first, because these things are incredibly smart compared to Mario Kart Wii. They can now travel faster and through the air, and overall I think I'm okay with these changes to single reds. They feel much more useful now, and actually seem like valuable items to hold on to, because they're intimidating. You can't bypass these without defense a lot of the time. Triple reds, however, are a little out of hand. Buff triple reds in an 8-player game was so busted that you could debate that it was a better 4v4 item than shocks were. Like, that's wild if you think about it. They could dominate a race when used well. Luckily, they were less common compared to Mario Kart Wii and only obtainable in 2 positions, 3rd and 4th. Where they are actually obtainable as another buff to first place. It'll be more of a disadvantage to second if anything, and if you play your cards correctly, you should never be getting hit out first by them unless they're held into second place. They're definitely a busted item and nearly out of hand. By the same token, them being potentially better than the shock, like in teams, also goes to show that the shock got pretty nerfed. The reason the shock got nerfed was because of largely the removal of the Mega Mushroom and heavy nerfing to the Bullet Bill. The Bullet Bill in this game is a piece of shit. I don't like it one bit. I agree that the item was out of hand in Mario Kart Wii, but they just slayed it in this game. I think MK8 found the happy compromise, but it was honestly just borderline bad for the game in both Mario Kart Wii and 7. It was to the point that you didn't ever want to pull Bullet Bills in the back in this game. They weren't easily chainable, they were significantly slower than Mario Kart Wii, and dodging with them was not always great as a result because you wouldn't have another item after them. Stars were still quite good though, so it's not like the art of dodging was dead by any means. With many target shock spots in the game also, using deadly shocks is still very possible. MK7 was the first game where they allowed 2 shocks in play at once, and I've spoken my opinion on this before. I think it is actually a good change because it nerfs the shock. But this is also a little degenerate with item spike, because if both players are playing optimally, then spamming the shock when the second one comes into play is the optimal decision. So just bad shocks will be used if there are 2 in play, because that's what's optimal for the person with the shock. In Deluxe, this worked without item swap pretty well, because you had to find out on your own if the other team had the shock, or you can manipulate them into not knowing you have it perhaps. The takeaway is that using a great shock is way harder in 7 than Mario Kart Wii, which I think is a plus to the game at large. The blooper is still trash, so I'm not going to talk about it at all. It's mostly the same for bananas, mushrooms, and green shells too. Not that they're trash like the blooper, but they're just not super changed up. The only thing I'll mention, I suppose, is that greens are easier to connect now, which is again an advantage for first place. It seems that their hitboxes have been increased, and that when thrown behind you, they travel much faster now. That makes it harder to react to being hit by them. In Mario Kart Wii, you backed greens on people sometimes, and like it acted like a banana or like a fib effectively. In this game, backing greens is actually something you can just line up on straights and just give people no time to react to them. And this is an interesting change, and I'm pretty indifferent on it. Perhaps the hitboxes weren't actually increased. It's just that the kart hitboxes are bigger in this game. When everybody uses monster tires, like, I guess that's a reason why it would be considered just be big. It'd just be easier to hit them in general. Triple mushrooms and goldens are perhaps more crucial than ever before now, given how much weaker the bullet bill is in this game, as well as being obtainable early in races to potentially capture early leads. And even regular mushrooms are more important in the sense that they can act like they can act like an auto acceleration button, which is crucial for a game without standstill mini turbos. Bob-ombs are back in the game, albeit quite rare. A notable change is that they now attempt to lock onto targets by walking slightly, and they're obtained in much higher spots now. I think they've been buffed just slightly. I'm neutral to this change, but I think it's good to have them appear solely in spots around triple reds. That brings me to the Fire Flower, the first new item in the game, and like the Bob-omb, it's obtainable in the exact same spots and is somewhat rare. I'm surprised it took them so long to bring this item into the game, given its history in the franchise. I absolutely loathe this item in MKA, but in honesty, I think it's actually relatively okay in 7. The one change I would make here is not to the Fire Flower itself, but to the hit stun in this game to match Deluxe's more. The hit stun isn't nearly as much in 7 as this game, but you can get, or it's like not nearly as bad as in 8 for Fire Flowers, but you can get comboed by these and just lose a ton of speed and coins. They're one of the few items that actually seem to they're semi-reliable to take on first place as well, which is kind of rare in this game. The Lucky 7 was a new item that gives you 7 items at once, hence the name. I think a lot of people used to use this like a star that you could pull in as high as 6. You just spam all the items, you get a star. Cool, maybe you read somebody, that's cool also. This item is the rarest in the game, and I think that's probably a good thing because it's a pretty solid pull whenever you get it. At its lowest, you can use it to get as a get out of jail free card in the pack, and it will pretty much hard counter triple reds if used semi-competently. At its best, it can completely flip a race if you use it with high skill and precision. It's a welcome addition that made too much sense at the time, given the name of the game. The second I saw this, I also said the next game would be featuring a Crazy 8. This was a pretty dope call for me, but I guess it was pretty obvious too. All things considered, I like how everything's set up in this game. Rarely you will just get ruined after a blue shell or completely have your race ruined by half the room dodging a shock, and it feels like one of the least chaotic packs of any Mario Kart, but it's probably because it's only 8 players. I have very fond memories of Worldwides in this game, and it's set out to be a much safer version of Mario Kart Wii, I think. One with better item balance, just to get sales moving on the 3DS. I would say it definitely succeeded in doing this. While I think they did a pretty good job with the item distribution, I will be the first to admit it's definitely not perfect. Far from it, actually. A lot of this has to do with some items just not being fun to deal with. I'll talk about a few of those instances in a second. So, the Tanuki Leaf is another new item. I've left it in the star last for very good reason, and in my opinion, these items are a little too busted for offense. The star, of course, is well known, but I would argue this is the best iteration of the star. It will still be quite fast and can chain items in the back and be used to dodge shocks or any other items, but because of how Wi-Fi works in this game, however, stars are absurdly powerful. Like, they just stop on a dime, re-accelerate to full speed just instantly. They are so good. The only nerf that they have is when you hit somebody, they won't lose their item anymore. So even though stars are very easy to hit in this game and have a rather devastating effect on people without acceleration items, at least most of the time you'll have a mushroom to recover. So the effect can be like negated a little bit. While the star definitely makes the shock so a great team item, another thing to consider is that in the back, if a player must hold the shock, a star can almost take them out of the race and just like pretty much make them a lightning bolt, and it pretty much reduces the race to a 4 versus 3, though the 3 still have a shock advantage. It's quite difficult to win a race guaranteed with last place compared to other games, so yeah, stars are pretty brutal for people who have to hold blues or shocks. The Tanuki Leaf is obviously a response to the recently released Super Mario 3D Land, and in a way, it would replace the Fib as a top spot item. This item could take out red shells, and even take out triple red shells sometimes, but I think the item was designed a little poorly. Though it was clearly added as a defense option for first, in many ways it did not act like one. This is because you activated the Tanuki Leaf, you only had a specific amount of time to use it, and if not timed well, you could actually get punished for using it by buffed red shells. When using it, you could press L to spin around like in 3D Land. If you could take out nearby racers as or like most items too that are worse than red shells. And you could cancel it by letting a shell hit the tail from your cart without spinning. But often this isn't the best option because if a player has a second red, you can no longer block that second red if you do that. But if they do have 2 reds, you could also target them with a first red to get them to activate their leaf, and then wait it out and throw the second red when time is up. Technically, if there's a new item set, they could break a little to let it hit the leaf and chain into that set, but this was a little rare actually. Usually punishing Tanuki tails is relatively skill-based, and it's a way that you can actually take out first, because they're relied on if you rely on the game knowledge and timing. Though it is defense, Tanuki leaves are the only non-easily chainable item in first place, and oftentimes this can be crucial for first place to stay protected at all times. Given how hard it is to hit somebody out of first when they play properly, I think this could be a good thing that there's technically a way to still get them out despite the position always giving some form of defense. You just have to manipulate the Tanuki, but the problem is that it makes the Tanuki Leaf an undesirable item for first place, given you have a lead, and therefore an item that you would rather not have over like a shell or something. They're bothersome to pull even without somebody attacking you in first, because optimally you should get rid of the item in order to hold 2 items as much as possible. But you also don't want to leave yourself completely vulnerable if the person behind you pulls a red shell and can't wait for you to run out of your leaf. Though in isolated scenario, pulling Tanuki leaves suck, especially on DK Pass for first, because oftentimes if you get one early in a race, it can prevent you from getting the overpowered box. At the end of the day, Tanuki leaves just aren't really something that you want to get, and it's something that other people just don't want to deal with, so the satisfaction of the item is kind of low, and that's why I don't really like it that much. What's probably confusing is I described the Tanuki as a good item and then proceeded to talk about how bad it is. And, well, there's a reason for this, and it's because Tanuki leaves, outside of first, are crazy good. It's weirdly an item that you can get in first place, but it's better when you get it out of first place. And let me tell you, these things are degenerate. Like, the pack has it pretty easy in this game because of less players, but this item just ruins them. Given how large the carts are in the game, the area covered by a Tanuki leaf spin is pretty large, and it can be spammed on top of it, just like instantaneously. It's just a wall, you can't deal with that thing. And as a result, this item is legitimately amazing for delivering hits to people in narrow environments, or even non-narrow ones if you play it correctly. It is ridiculously hard to avoid, and it makes stopping the troll of them like really good in team matches, and it's a legitimately good option on occasion. Even in free-for-all, they're so good at trolling people that even in free-for-all it can be beneficial to you just to ruin your like opponents. Even to like just ensure that somebody won't catch up to your spot, or like to take away all their coins or something. If you hit somebody without a mushroom, the effect is devastating on them. And honestly, I have an issue with it. It's an item that the user and victims almost never want to have or see. And I think if that's the case, the game would just be better off without it. And I think that's a very bad thing for the item. It's probably why it got removed after this game immediately. To summarize, Mario Kart 7 was clearly a handheld take on Mario Kart Wii. It tried to fix a lot of the problems in Mario Kart Wii, and actually succeeded in fixing a lot of them. It's very debatable that it just wasn't as interesting as Mario Kart Wii, however. But anyway, let's quickly talk about how 7's metagame differed from Mario Kart Wii. First place is now a much better position to be in. If you think about what I'm saying by the logic of a racing game, this is a great fix. As mentioned earlier, coins contributed a lot to this, and the lack of reliable options in second place has to take out without fire or timing a bad Tanuki leaf is limited. Of course, green snipes are a little easier not going close range, but I would say that displacing first is kind of hard. Second place is now weaker, and I would say while it can still capitalize on blue shells, it's got its own problems to worry about, like triple reds and a lack of speed and coins if first is playing optimally. I think the respawn time for item boxes and coins were way too slow in this game and really destroyed this position, and I think the game's worse off for that. I think a better solution would have been to make coins respawn quicker and decrease the rate of blue shells a little more, but overall, this isn't game breaking, just a fix I would make personally. Overall, I like the item distribution a lot in this game. Some of the items themselves are a little frustrating to deal with. The Firefly would become more of a bother in MK8, but the Tanuki Leaf and even Stars actively encourage stop trolling, which I think is a big problem when it's frequently an optimal strategy, even in free-for-all. I like that the top combo is pretty busted again. I always think that this is good. Being able to drift off-road of high-speed combos is crazy, and we get super nerfed in 8 as a result. Considering how poor acceleration was though, stopping a troll in the pack was a very valid strategy in this game, and honestly it starts to hinder the gameplay a little. It's degenerate. Not in the way that driving backwards for shocks is bad, but it's getting there. Even with poor acceleration in the top combos, it's still pretty clearly the best setup, so we're stuck with it. Though, I will say that one other interesting thing about this game is that you can switch up your tires and kind of try to get advantages on certain tracks, so I thought that was cool also. Free-for-all is weird in this game because it doesn't feel like any position is super desirable. First place is for sure buffed now, but there's still a lot of blues in free-for-all. Second place has been nerfed, and catching up is more difficult than in Mario Kart Wii. I suppose it's good that in the sense that each position feels like it's not a terrible disadvantage or advantage, which is a big problem for many MK games because usually the front and back are busted and the pack is trash, but the pack got a little buffed in this game because I think the other spots kind of got nerfed a little. It's a little less hectic, and you can pull some powerful stuff in the middle like triple reds and sevens. The Thundercloud also isn't here to ruin your day anymore. I think 4 vs 4 is the most skill-based format in this game due to the addition of team play and more dice rolls, evening out the players per team. Like, the luck evens out more. I also think 4v4s are more fun to play in this game because it feels like the game encourages you to focus on driving quickly while still having strategy elements. The shock is a good option in wars now, but it's not a completely busted one, and you can get burned for investing in it too much, which I honestly thought wasn't true in Mario Kart Wii. Though many people don't like this feeling, I like that it also feels like you can picture an entire room at one time also and understand everything that's happening at once. This game may be less about prediction, but about knowing the optimal choice in a wide array of scenarios presented to you. This is a big change from Mario Kart Wii, but I still think it's a satisfying change and in its own unique, different way. As mentioned, the shock is still a very good item worth going for in this game, but you can still lose with it. It is way less over-centralizing in the sense that it feels less like a winner-takes-all kind of item. In a failed bagging effort in Mario Kart Wii, it feels like, okay, at least we went for the right option and just got unlucky, but in MK7, a failed bagging effort just feels like, well, we shouldn't have had to rely on shock to begin with, we shouldn't have gotten outplayed earlier. Additionally speaking, you only have 4 players to score points within this game, so a 4 versus 3 is a bigger advantage than a 5v4 or 6v5, so if your team misses a shock while hard bagging, it's a big disadvantage. The amount of points between first and second is no longer 3 or more either, so like dodging one person to first is less of a benefit than in Mario Kart Wii as well. The shock nerf is a big difference and is refreshing, I think. In teams, stop trolling is pretty degenerate, I'll admit. One of the bigger problems in teams is that advantage state is pretty ridiculous. There's a lot of ways to infiltrate top spots in a game with more players, but in this game, getting by a wall of triple reds, potentially having to deal with a Tanuki leaf, while the first place is just gone of 10 coins, like that's lethal. Sometimes the shock is your only way past all of this stuff, and sometimes it won't appear because it's more rare in this game. Luckily, it's still obtainable, but even if you get it, it will likely not flip a opponent top 3 into a race win, just potentially lightening the damage, unless it's a really amazing shock. What's also interesting is that because the shock is obtainable in only 8th in this game, that means that a valid strategy in this game would be attempting to prevent your opponent from getting the shock in this game by staying 8th and refusing to leave it. This was a strategy that was used when a team had set up an advantage very well and they were in top 3. One player could just hop into 8th place and refuse to let the other team pass him. Now technically you still have to drive forward to not disconnect in this game, but this is still good I think at slowing the momentum. It means that while this is a great situational strategy, it was not foolproof. So a lot of times repeatedly falling off as a strategy to prevent the other team from getting the shock. They could choose to play the game or also to give up and just go forward, and even if you did have to give them one box, it was only one box instead of multiple ones. The pressure is on the team in the disadvantage at the end of the day. You could argue this strategy is degenerate for competitive play, but I think it's fine because really, in my eyes, any strategy that buffs front running and nerfs shock bagging is probably for the better of the game. In the middle of the game's life, we had to ban lapdown trolling. I agree with the decision. This may sound hypocritical because my last video saying trolling was the purest format in Mario Kart Wii, but there's some differences here. The first one is that stars are super buffed in this game. If you aren't a moron, you should not be missing people ever with his star while lapdown trolling. The people who claim that trolling is unavoidable in Mario Kart Wii are just wrong here in comparison. It may be hard, but avoiding an MK7 given the opponent has a star is like a near impossibility. You are not avoiding that. The way to troll is weird to set up because you have to go slow for a lap, but it seems like it's beyond broken for late race considering you naturally pull shocks while attempting it too. But that's not even why the ban is justified. I think the ban is justified because the game doesn't offer much of a reason to be a lap down anyway. The game will disconnect you for going backwards and the shock is not as over-centralizing, or even close to as over-centralizing as Mario Kart Wii. So, if you're lap down in MK7, it's because you're trying to troll specifically, not because you're already back there, because maximizing your shock probabilities requires it, like in Mario Kart Wii. So really, the game's meta doesn't need you in the back to begin with. It's much easier to ban it because it doesn't naturally come up into the game, if that makes sense. There are scenarios where you can be a lap down in MK7, like the one I mentioned where someone will try to prevent the other team from pulling the shock in a last-ditch effort if they're in a heavy disadvantage. But this is still different than Mario Kart Wii, I think. The reason they're in the back isn't because it's an optimal strategy. They're in the back because their team got outplayed and they did the last possible thing. They don't deserve the opportunity to troll because they didn't just lose the RNG roll for the shock while they're back there already. They chose to go back there because their team got outplayed already. It's a big difference. Essentially, there's no true incentive to go a lap down, and wars outside of very specific scenarios. I've watched a match where it happened nearly every race, and it was even on a YouTube on Final Fight's old channel, but in reality, that match was a very specific scenario where both teams pretty much believed that they had the better set of 3 players in the front, and that they didn't need the shock to begin with. They were just trying to prevent the other team from getting it. To summarize, this all up, MK7's metagame was different. Bagging was nerfed and front running was buffed. Strategies such as stop trolling were buffed, which is probably the biggest negative for the game. There are a lot of MKW elements to it, but the game's biggest difference to MKW was that it was more focused on applying solutions to problems and knowing how to solve them than it was predicting the state of the race. And 7, you knew exactly what was going on. You could understand the state of the room. I really liked this personally, but I understand why people think that there's more room for a meta to grow when there aren't givens like this. To me, I think it made 7 special. Now 7 had problems, trust me. And this isn't to say that 7's a better game than Wii or 8, because if I'm being honest, I don't think it is. But competitive MK7 was like chess as opposed to speed chess. In MK7, you can analyze the board pretty well and think ahead and make plays because you have a full understanding of the room with only 8 players and items by. In the other modern games, there's more chaos and more unknowns, making decision making more of an educated guess and about calculating risk without knowing 100% if what you're doing will work. Perhaps this makes the skill ceiling of 7 lower because it's easier to perhaps respond to every scenario correctly, but I would say that this is still a difficult ceiling to reach, however, and whether or not this is the optimal way to play competitive MK, I think it was special. Mario Kart 7, while certainly not the most glamorous MK, was unique, and I don't think we'll get one like it anytime soon ever again. It played things pretty safe with the changes, but it still made a lot of good changes that made the game a breath of fresh air for me after playing MK Wii so many hours in the years before 2012. I'll always cherish my time playing this game, and even miss it. Perhaps soon I'll try to host a throwback event, but we'll see.
Not going to lie, that last section sounded like a conclusion already, but to wrap it up, I really liked Mario Kart 7. I think it's a pretty forgotten game now because in the recent debates it's Mario Kart Wii versus Mario Kart 8, and nobody thinks about 7. When 7 was still new, it got a lot of shade from the Mario Kart Wii players because they considered it to be inferior, whether or not they play the game or not. I think in the post-8 era, more people give the game respect for what it was. Many of the Wii fans today I see referring to 7 in a positive light now, though I think it's only to express how much they hate MK8. They say MK7 was alright. At least it wasn't 8. And that is a valid opinion to have as a Mario Kart Wii player if they actually played the game a decent amount of time, because 7 is quite literally a safer version of Mario Kart Wii. I think that's the takeaway of the video. My criticisms of this game are not that its gameplay is bad, or that the tracks are bad, or that it's imbalanced, because if I'm going to be real here, Mario Kart 7 nailed it when it came to all these core important factors for having a good MK game. The game does everything that it needs to do correctly, I think, but my biggest criticisms for the game is that this is like all it feels like it did right. My biggest complaint about Mario Kart 7 is that the game is not ambitious. From the start, I think the game accepted that it was not better than Mario Kart Wii. It accepted its identity as a handheld game that was pretty fun in its own right. There's nothing wrong with this, but it could have been more confident, I suppose, like Mario Kart DS. MKDS was a handheld Mario Kart game, but it's regarded as one of the best games in the series to date still. And why? Well, despite being a handheld game, it added more than Double Dash. The track total was doubled with Retro Tracks inclusions for the first time. It introduced a hype-ass mission mode that everybody loved. There's Wi-Fi for the first time, and it had stuff that it didn't even need to be there, like star rankings and emblems, and even like telling you your top 5 TTs on tracks with vehicles. And, emblems absolutely did not need to be in the game, for example. But it was in the game. And I look at MK7 and think, what does this game offer that Mario Kart Wii doesn't? And the only relevant answer I could come up with was that it changed the gameplay. And you know what? That was worth it for me. But how do you not change up the gameplay? I guess. But from someone who really isn't a fan of every MK and just wants to play what they see as the best, I understand why people just didn't play this game. It did not do much to raise the bar. It was just there. It played it safe. And for me, I wish it was a little more. But I played it anyway because I love trying out new things. I found Mario Kart 7 to be a great experience, and I do not regret throwing MK Wii in the back seat during 2012 and 2013 because the game was still quite fun on its own right. Do I think it's better than Mario Kart Wii? Well, in some ways, yeah, but overall, no. I found it more worth playing than Mario Kart Wii because it was new when it came out. Nowadays, I don't really find either of them worth playing anymore, but there's more options to play Mario Kart Wii, so I suppose that is more worth playing in the present day. But as a player in 2019, I would say my time playing Mario Kart Wii in 2008 to 2011 was more fun overall than any time on 7. There's still a niche audience that likes 7 more than Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart 8. I disagree with them now, but after playing MK7 for so long, I understand the game's strengths and get why some people believe this. Many people are attracted by 7 because it feels like a very well balanced game compared to Wii and 8. The thing is though, like the players of each MK game, a lot of people like to ignore the flaws of each one. And a lot of 7 players complain about soft trolling, saying it's degenerate and ruins the game, yet still support 7 as by far the best MK. This is almost like a case where hating stop trolling and loving 7 is a one-pick scenario, because I think if you support 7 at large, you just gotta deal with the fact that it has some problems in balancing. A lot of people like to support it, also complain about it, but then go ahead and ignore the complaints they made and say it's still the best anyway. Some items are too overpowered, and coins are a little bit broken, I think. I think this system was made better, especially in 8 Deluxe, but I guess it's like the first time they brought it back, so there's still some things to work out here. The game doesn't offer many modes. It's okay to accept these issues though and still love MK7 because there's obviously a lot to love. My final thoughts that are Mario Kart 7 is the most basic ass Mario Kart game that they could have made. This sounds like a huge insult to the game, but in reality this isn't necessarily a bad thing. The average Mario Kart game is generally critically acclaimed. The series dominates in sales numbers and is by far the king of kart racers. It's definitely not a bad Mario Kart game because, like I mentioned, it checks all the boxes that an MK game needs to check. It just doesn't do much else to top it off. I think a lot of people missed out on this game by refusing to play it. We never got huge numbers in the 7 community, and they were even lower than 8U's, which was on a failing console. I think it was because MK7 came out on the 3DS in a time period where people thought the 3DS was going to fail. The 3DS really hit its stride when Pokemon X and Y came out, which was only a few months before MK8 launched. So a lot of people got the game and never joined our community. I think it's unfortunate, I guess. To me, I wish more people could have the mindset of trying a game out even if it's not their favorite in the series. Each MK game is quite unique, and even if 7 isn't your favorite, there's still a lot to enjoy with it. It fixes a lot of Mario Kart Wii's problems even. And I just feel like many people play a new game in a series and just don't enjoy it because they think it's worse than their favorite ones. Like, well, this one sucks because it's not better than this one. And it's fine to have preferences, but it is possible to enjoy multiple games in a franchise. And you know, MK7 has almost, like there's no competitions in the game anymore compared to like Mario Kart Wii, which still runs active leagues and stuff. And I think it makes sense because Mario Kart Wii has a much bigger following and is widely considered to be the better game. I think it's still a bummer that we have no 7 competitions at all anymore though, because even if the game wasn't a standout entry, I think it deserves more than nothing in the current day. And I think that Mario Kart Wii probably has a little too much in the current day. But, like, the thing is, like, even if 7 has nothing, I feel like it doesn't deserve just quite nothing. But that's how it is, I suppose. But it's not... I don't think it's that much worse overall. But I think this is going to be up to the people who still play the game. If they want competitions, they've got to step up and they've got to make them. The 7 player page is still thriving, more so than the 8 ones, and it's because there are dedicated players there. People have just got to make things work if they want tournaments again for 7. So if there are players who are missing the leagues, you can't like just wait for them to happen, especially since I don't think I'm going to be making them anymore like I did in the past. But if you guys made them, maybe I'd play on occasion if there were more these days. You just gotta go out there and like make it happen, I think. Anyways, that's all for today. Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U is next, but admittedly I'm kind of burnt out on the writing because I've been scripting these analysis videos because I want to make sure I cover everything. This next one may take a little longer to come out than the first 2, so I hope you enjoyed the first 2 videos, and thanks for watching as always, and I'll try to get some new videos up soon. Thank you, everybody.